Good Sunday evening.
Hey guys.
All right, so tonight, welcome to another Travel Therapy Mentor live video. We're going to be talking about housing, which is one of the things that is probably one of the more scary aspects of travel therapy for most people starting out, and also one of the things that's it's kind of anxiety producing, and people wonder like, oh, how do you find short-term housing? How are you able to move from assignment location to location without consistent housing? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our own situation on this contract. We are now in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Whitney starts her first day of work tomorrow. So we'll talk about what we did for housing this time. It was a little different than normal for us. So we're going to get into that and talk about all the options out there for travel therapists. Yep. So hopefully you guys learned something. Whitney's going to introduce us, and I'm going to get this video shared in a couple groups.
Hey everybody. So for those who may not know us, my name is Whitney Aiken.
I'm Jared Kazaza.
And we're the faces behind the Travel Therapy Mentor site. A lot of you guys might know us from our Facebook page, either on our Travel Therapy Mentor site or our Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist site. We also have a website, traveltherapymentor.com, where we provide a lot of information about being a travel therapist, all the various ins and outs. Each week we try to bring you guys videos on different informational topics. Like Jared said, this week we're going to be talking about housing, which is very prominent in our minds right now because we actually just moved this weekend to our new location for our next contract. So we wanted to talk to you about, like Jared said, kind of how our housing went and all that. So we're actually coming at you guys from my car tonight, and the reason for that, Ryan says, are you in a trunk? No, we're in the front seat. The reason we're doing it from the car tonight is we don't have our internet set up yet. So we're actually sitting outside of our new gym parking lot using the Wi-Fi because that was kind of our only option tonight. We had hoped that at our new location we were going to be able to use my phone as a hotspot for internet because I have a 50 gigabyte hotspot on my phone plan, but the area that we're staying, like literally at the end of our street, my cell phone doesn't get very good service. But in the neighborhood, on the main road right outside the street, I get great service, but at the actual site, I don't. So we're going to have to find something else for internet probably next week. But until then, we're coming at you from the Gold's Gym parking lot. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I see Ryan's on. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Lisa. If anybody else is joining in live, we'd love if you would just say hi in the comments and let us know who you are. We always like to hear who our audience is. Whether you're a current travel therapist, are you somebody who's thinking about doing travel therapy in the future? Are you just watching because you're friends and family? Let us know who you are. Jared's going to share our video in a couple groups, and then once we get that shared, we'll get started and dive into tonight's topic. So again, Ryan says, I'm surprised Jared doesn't get reception being 6'10". Yeah, what's funny about that is we're going to get into talking about where we're staying this time. We're actually staying in our RV. And if I go in the upstairs of the RV, which is closer to the front of the neighborhood by like 6 feet, I get better reception than if I go to the back of the RV. So maybe there's something to that, Ryan. So anyway, like I said, we're going to talk about housing, which is one of the more fun things. We had posted on our page the other day that we were going to talk about this tonight, and we asked, you guys, if y'all live in short-term housing, if you rent apartments, if you do an RV, and we had quite a few people reach out that are also doing the RV route, so that's pretty cool. We've actually done both, so we have a little bit of experience with doing both. So we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about that tonight. Okay. Oh, Jared's trying out different lighting.
No.
The lighting's not great in here. Can you guys hear us okay? Let us know if you can hear us. I know you can't see us that well. We're kind of shadowy and mysterious tonight.
It was Halloween recently.
Yeah,
anyway.
Spooky vibes. Okay, so let's tell them a little bit about where we are and how our housing went this time.
All right, so our current situation was, like I said, a little different than normal. We still have our fifth wheel, which some of you guys might know. We were thinking about trying to sell it. We haven't lived in it for about 15 or 16 months now. So it's been in storage all this time, and we were thinking about selling it, but we weren't sure because we're not sure like what our future plans are going to be. Things are kind of up in the air for us right now. So we still had it. So this assignment, we're actually looking at both furnished housing options as well as options for campground staying in the fifth wheel. So we went through both of those today, which is or on this assignment, and we can talk about that today. What ended up happening for us though is we reached out to a person. Where'd you find her?
So on Furnished Finder, because we had looked at a bunch of different options, and we're going to talk about that, like all the different sites you can search, but we had looked at some different options, and then I ended up contacting somebody through Furnished Finder, which is a website that is geared towards healthcare professionals providing short-term furnished housing. Well,
what turned out really well with this lady is that she actually had a campsite in the yard of one of her rental properties. And she was like, oh, well, if you guys have a fifth wheel, don't even worry about, this furnished apartment I have. Instead, you can stay here, and it's really cheap. So we're paying $200 a month to stay at this, basically an open field with hookups. So electricity, everything but internet. So we have electricity, water, sewer, and it's actually really nice. It's dark, it's quiet, it's really nice for us. So yeah, $200 a month, which is definitely the cheapest we've ever paid for housing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pros and cons to kind of what we decided to do. So the way it went was we were sort of back and forth. We had lived in the camper full time for about 2.5 years. So back when we first started traveling for 6 months for our very first assignment, we lived in a furnished place that we found on Craigslist. And that was our very first time as travel PTs. And we worked during that 6 months to save up to buy our camper. So then we lived in the camper full time for 2.5 years, all of our assignments. So we would only ever take assignments where we could find an RV park or a place to park our camper. Now recently, we started going out the country more. If you guys are following our story, you might know that we started taking more time off from work. So earlier this year at our last assignment, we were kind of in the same boat we are right now, where we had the camper and we were thinking about doing the camper thing, but in the area we were working, there were no good campsites. It was really expensive. It was close to DC, kind of between DC and Richmond. And we ended up finding a better opportunity just doing a short-term furnished rental. That one we found on Craigslist. So the most recent time before this, we lived in a short-term furnished apartment. It was actually a basement apartment at someone's house. They had fully furnished, all utilities included.
With a kitchen.
And that one was really nice because everything was in their name. We didn't have to set up the utilities or anything ourselves. So this time we were kind of going back and forth, like, it's going to be winter. We thought it might be nice to stay in an apartment. So we did look on some of the typical sites. We searched Airbnb. There weren't a lot of good Airbnb options. We searched
There were some, but they were all either, I think the cheapest I found was $1,100 a month. Yeah. So somewhere between $1,100 and like $1,400 a month.
Compared to the $200 that we ended up paying for the camper. And we would have had to leave the camper in storage and pay for storage too on top of $1,100. And for this rural area of North Carolina that we're in, $1,100 is crazy.
$1,100 is a lot of money here.
No, that's crazy. So
we drove by some houses today that were for sale for like $23,000. So
that's nuts.
Yeah.
I can't believe somebody was charging that much. So not really any good options on Airbnb, nothing really on Craigslist. So I checked Furnished Finder, which is this great website that I think it probably started for travel nurses.
Yeah.
Because it tends to be for short-term furnished rentals. And there's a lady, a really nice lady that's in this area, and she actually had several listings on there. Turns out she's a realtor, and she had a really good one I had called about. But as you might know, if any of the you guys are current travelers on here, I see Julie's on here. Hi, Julie. Hi, Jeff. You guys are current travelers, so you guys might know there's always this little back and forth period when you're planning your contract and you've set up the phone interview and you're waiting to get the offer. And we always start calling about housing when we first find out about a job.
Yeah, before we ever do the interview.
Right.
We usually will, find out that there's a job in an area and we start scouting out housing before we ever even interview. Sometimes we decide if we want to be submitted for a job, whether or not we can find housing in the area. Mm-hmm. Whereas some people will just find the perfect job, go ahead and be submitted for it, accept the job, and then just hope they can find housing. We're not that adventurous, so we want to make sure that there are at least some housing options in the area before we ever accept a job offer.
Right. So that's kind of what we were doing this time. I sort of started to call around the campgrounds. I started to call around Furnished Finder just to get a feel for it, and then I usually say, okay, I'm gonna call you back in a couple days, in a week, when I know for sure. So we were in this in-between period when I found this place on Furnished Finder, and by the time I called back, she said, oh, I'm sorry, it just got rented out. I don't have it available anymore. And I said, okay, well, that's all right. We're going to come and we're going to look at some RV parks that we might be able to do just in case. Because she also said, she's like, well, I have something, but it won't be available till December 1st. And I was like, well, we have the RV. And this is when we just happened to find out from talking to this lady that she had an RV site at one of her rentals. And that quickly became an option for us. So it's just kind of this always back and forth when you're trying to decide things. And that's very much how it was for us.
We pretty much went into this with a few different options. When Whitney accepted the job, we knew that there were some campgrounds in the area that would be an option. We knew worst case scenario, there was an Airbnb. Hey, Ryan, what's up? There was an Airbnb. Like I said, they're pretty expensive. And then we also knew that there were some Furnish Finder listings in the area. So we knew that we had several options.
Yeah.
We got very lucky on this contract because we flew back from NSC in Albuquerque. We flew back to Raleigh. Raleigh's in only an hour from where we're living now. So we just took the extra hour to drive to the area and explore the options that we had. And we had 3 different campgrounds we went and looked at, and they all had pros and cons. Some were further away, some were more expensive, some had electricity included, some you had to pay separate for it. Some had Wi-Fi. Obviously, this place does not have Wi-Fi, which is the downside.
Big con.
But yeah, so we got to explore all the options. That's not always possible as a travel therapist, especially, if you were going to move 12 hours away, it's not like you can go drive there and check everything out before you move.
Yeah. So this time was a little different. I don't think we've ever done that before where we went and scoped out housing. Well, no, our very first one we did because our very first one was about an hour and a half from our hometown. But most of the time we don't. We usually do things sight unseen. Now, another option that some people do is when they're planning to look at something, they might actually just book a place short term for like the very first week that they arrive in a new place, might just book an Airbnb or a hotel for a week. And then when they get there on site, go and search around like we did. And that's another option if you're kind of uncertain and you don't trust these Craigslist things, via the internet. Or that sort of thing, and if you want to see something in person, because pictures don't always tell the whole story.
Yeah, and any of you guys, current travelers in here, let us know what you guys do. Are you in a fifth wheel or a camper? Are you, finding furnished places? If you do find furnished places, some people are really adventurous and they go with unfurnished places, and sometimes with not even utilities hooked up. So, they just get an apartment, furnish it with either rental furniture or Craigslist furniture, and get utilities hooked up. We would not do that. That's too much hassle, but people do that.
Yeah, so if you're watching, let us know how you do it. Do you do it in advance? Do you do it sight unseen, or do you wait until you get there? So in this circumstance, we actually had an opportunity to go and look at it. And after going and basically realizing we're going to do the RV for sure, it's just a matter of, are we going to do the campground or are we going to do this lady's site at her house? We decided on the lady's site at her house. There were a few reasons. It was super cheap. The campgrounds, there was one that had everything we could ever need. Beautiful campground, full hookups. They had a laundry on site. They had a bathhouse on site, which is nice in case your water ever freezes and you need to take a shower. They had Wi-Fi. They had everything, but it was 30 minutes away. And it was $600 a month, which isn't bad. Like,
hey, Brian.
600. Hi, Brian. 600 a month is not bad.
Yeah,
and
not bad
30-minute drive isn't terrible. But this lady's place was $200 a month, and it was an 8-minute drive from my from my work. So I'm like,
it's really convenient. We actually, coming into it, I thought that we would probably choose the one further away because I usually like to be a little further, but I didn't realize how rural of an area Goldsboro is. Even the stuff in town is still pretty rural. Like where we are, like a 8-minute drive from Whitney's work and probably a 6 to 8-minute drive from the gym and all that. We are still pretty rural.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a small town anyway. So being 30 minutes away means like literally 25 minutes at least from a convenience store.
Yeah,
so
from anything.
So had we not come and looked, we probably would have chose one of those campgrounds because they have reviews. We would know what all is included. We wouldn't have probably chose someone's yard with a hookup if we weren't able to come look at it. But in this situation, we were actually able to do that, and it turned out pretty well.
Yeah, and it seems really nice. It seems really safe. It's a cute little neighborhood. It's just in the backyard, and I'm really going to enjoy those 8-minute commutes to work. And it's close to the grocery store. It's close to the gym. So it's going to work out well. The only thing is we just need to get the internet set up on our own. But that added cost of the internet is not going to offset, the $400 that they're saving.
Yeah, definitely not.
Okay, B is on, and she says that she uses Furnish Finder. I really like Furnish Finder.
Yeah.
I'm glad that exists. I think that's making housing a lot easier for us travel.
I think so too. I think Furnish Finder, I didn't know about it back. I don't know if it was around when we first started traveling, but I know recently, I think for a lot of travel therapists, it's a lot better than Airbnb because the prices are more reasonable. Airbnb pricing is more on a day-to-day basis. And even though there are long-term discounts, it's still usually pretty expensive for long term. Like I said, this area $1,100 and up for a month.
Whereas the Furnish Finder place was going to be $600.
Yeah, $600 with utilities included
for a 1-bedroom apartment. So that really wasn't bad. So that's kind of a little bit about how things went for us this time. So we want to get into talking a little bit more detail about how some other therapists might go about finding housing. So talking about the RV route, if you own an RV already or you're thinking about buying an RV, there's a lot of pros and cons to doing an RV.
Yeah, and the biggest advice, people ask this all the time because, my original website was Fifth Wheel PT. So I know a lot of, especially couples that bought fifth wheels after, seeing our adventures. And I think it's great for a lot of people, but it's definitely not for everybody. And it's also, it depends, the main factor, and when people ask me this now, back when we first started traveling, I thought it was the best thing. But now I realize that it's not. And the biggest factor is how long are you going to be traveling? Because if you're only going to be traveling a year or a year and a half or even 2 years, buying a camper is probably not the best bet because there's a lot of upfront costs that go into it.
Yeah.
If you're going to be traveling for, 4 or 5 years, if you know for sure, or not even for sure, but you think that you're going to be traveling that long, then it can make sense because your monthly costs are going to be less. Like we said, the cheapest we would have found is $650. And if we had gone with Airbnb, it would have been $1,100 or more, and we're paying $200. And even if we had stayed at one of those campgrounds, we could have got one for $400. So the monthly cost is way less, but the upfront costs are high. So you need time for that cost savings to catch up with the upfront costs.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the maintenance that you have to do. It's kind of like owning your own house. So if you want every single weekend of yours just to be fun times and out exploring, some weekends we have to spend back at the camper doing maintenance on it. And, there is a little bit of headache that goes into that, getting repairs done and that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, it's just a different life choice. I wouldn't look at it purely from a financial aspect. You have to be somebody who wants to try that. And I think as a couple, it's easier because you do it together.
Definitely easier as a couple.
There are solo travelers
and it's definitely
that do
better
it.
if you have pets. That's the other thing. That's the other big factor. If you have pets, it might be a good idea to do that.
Yeah. So, there's just a lot of pros and cons. We've actually written some articles and done some videos on the pros and cons. So if you're out there and you're thinking about doing a travel trailer or a camper, feel free to reach out or just comment in the comments section, and we can share some of that information to go more in detail on that.
Yeah, just know that a lot of people glorify it, and we were probably guilty of this in the beginning as well. Because it's great. You don't have to pay those high costs. You can move quickly, but it's definitely not all. It's not all wonderful.
Yeah, but the other cool parts are that you always have your own surroundings. You always have your stuff with you. You don't have to worry about the packing and the moving as much as if you do an apartment.
Yeah, and honestly, like I said, we've been out of the camper for 15 or 16 months now. Moving back in felt like moving back home. It was kind of a weird feeling because when we moved out last time, we thought we'd probably never be in there again, and then we moved back in and back to our old kitchen and our old bed, and it was kind of cool. It's almost like that's the closest we've had to home for like the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, so there's just pros and cons to it, so just something to think about. But if you decide to buy an RV or you already have an RV, in order to find places to stay, typically what you're going to be looking for, we probably had to start the car to keep the lights on. Let's not kill the battery like we did the other day. That's another thing. There's always some struggles with camper stuff. We didn't have lights around our campground the other day when we were setting up our campsite, so I turned the headlights on the car to shine it on where we were trying to set up, and I killed the battery in the car, so Jared had to jump the car, so that was fun. Lisa says, there's a site I belong to on Facebook called Gypsy Soul Travel Nurse Housing Options. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about Facebook groups because that is a great resource, and that's something we use even on our most recent job search. Yeah,
so we're going to talk a little bit about if you decide to go the RV route, and then we're going to talk about what most therapists do, which is go the furnished short-term housing route. So if you go the RV route, typically you're going to stay at RV parks or campgrounds. So just a quick Google search will come up in the area that you're looking at a job if there's RV parks or campgrounds there. But I do want to tell you that it's important that you pick up the phone and call or look at their website to find out if it's actually a place where they do long-term RV stays. Because a lot of times if you just Google campgrounds, you'll get like overnight, weekend stay, vacation type campgrounds where it's just like primitive campsites or somewhere that just has water. They don't allow you to stay long term with your RV. It's just like camping with your family on the weekends. So you need to call and make sure they do long term stays.
Or read the reviews.
Yeah, or they'll let you do month to month. If they have what's called full hookup is what you want to look for. Full hookup means they have water, sewer, and electric at your site, so you don't have to worry about pulling your camper out and going and dumping the sewage. It's just right there. And then you want to ask some various questions. Again, not going to go into too much detail about that, but that's usually the number one option.
Yeah, and people ask us like, oh, how do you find campgrounds? Literally, we go on Google and search campgrounds near whatever city.
Yeah.
And we look at the options. We go to their websites. call them, read reviews, and that's all we do. It used to be, at some points, it would be like a 30-minute process to find our next campground. So that is a big benefit of traveling in the camper, is usually you can find housing pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Heather. Heather had a question for us that we're going to answer and get to in just a little bit about Airbnbs. So hang tight for that. So the other option about if you're looking for RV sites, if you're looking for campgrounds, is what is it? Good Sam is also a good resource, their website, to see if there's campgrounds and see reviews. Now, the other option, less known, would be like what we were talking about, what we're doing this time, is staying at an RV site at someone's house. And this is more common than you think. Some people have hookups in their yard. They have land, or they have a covered garage, or they have something that allows them to have somebody come and hook up there.
We've actually done that twice now. One time in Fayetteville, North Carolina, we stayed in, this guy actually had like almost a mini campground in his backyard with like 10 or 12 campers, and then this time as well.
And when we were house searching in Arizona, I saw some on Craigslist. So that's another thing. You can look on Craigslist, just search on Craigslist RV sites or RV hookups. And some people will have hookups at their house or at their farm or whatever. So that's an option if you don't find a good campground. Now, a very last resort, if you had an RV and you were planning on moving somewhere and you didn't have somewhere right away, you can do what's called boondocking for a short period, like a week or so, a couple days to a week.
Which, maybe not even a week.
Yeah, which is just basically where you park in a parking lot, like a Walmart parking lot, and you just run off of your battery or a generator and the water in your holding tanks. And that would be just a very short-term couple of days until you could find a site. Yeah,
and you also want to be very careful about leaving your camper unattended anywhere like that, because you know, some places, Walmart's, they'll let you spend the night, but they don't want you staying there multiple days. Yeah. So that would be a very last resort. And if that was that situation for us and we didn't find anything, we just would not take the camper.
Yeah. Although we've heard some people that lived in like a van or a small camper that like lived in the parking lot of the hospital they
if it's something inconspicuous, you can do that. But also that would be a very, I think, a lifestyle that we wouldn't really want to.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about bathroom use and things of that nature. Anyway, hey Heath, thank you for joining us. Okay, so then the very last thing on the RV side before we switch gears and talk about the short-term housing side. So some campgrounds will have cabins or park model RVs, which are like manufactured homes or tiny homes that they rent out on their campground. And we actually did this one time where we took our camper to get some repairs done for a week, and at the campground we were staying at, there was a park model or like a small manufactured home, and we rented that for a week at the end of our contract. And
I think that was like $500 a month with utilities included. So
yeah, and they're usually furnished, and you know, it just depends on the area. You just kind of have to call around and consider all options. And we know another girl that's also a travel therapist that has stayed in one, and she's not even an RV person. She just happened to call around and found that as an option.
Yeah, they can definitely be nice.
Yeah, I recently saw somebody else asking particularly about tiny homes, so maybe that's a lifestyle you want to pursue. Call your local RV park and just see if they have any. Okay. So
short-term housing, that's what most people are going to do. The big things that we check for, like when we're looking for short-term housing on this last contract, our very first contract ever, Whitney talked about, and on this current one, we're checking Airbnb first. I always go to Airbnb and just get an idea of what's available in the area and what the cost would be. Because if that's already pretty reasonable, Airbnb, at least you can read reviews. They have some additional protections. Usually you're going to be more safe going that route than any other, maybe Furnish Finder as well. But Airbnb is usually the first place I check. It's very easy to go in there, just type in the location, put in the dates that you need, and you can see what's available. If there's no Airbnbs or they're unreasonable prices, then we definitely look at Furnish Finder. We look at Craigslist. You have to be very careful about Craigslist because there are some scams on there, especially if you're going to be putting down a deposit sight unseen. You have to be really careful about that. Then we also check, let's see, what else?
I'm going to actually turn the car so we don't kill the battery like we did the other day and have to get the car jumped with the lights on. Hey Lisa, thanks for joining us. If you guys are getting any value out of this, I saw a couple of people gave us thumbs up. If you don't mind just giving us a thumbs up or a heart on the video if you're learning anything or you're enjoying it, just let us know. So Jared already talked about some sites that are pretty common to search if you're searching for short-term housing: Airbnb, VRBO, Furnish Finder, Craigslist.
Yeah, VRBO is the one I was trying to think of. We definitely check on there. That's a really quick search, just like Airbnb.
Yeah. Thank you guys. We appreciate the love. So another option, which is not as ideal, but you can call around to different apartment complexes. So you can go on and just Google for like short-term housing, and some apartment complexes, especially if it's in an area that they tend to have transient people, like a military area or something like that, will do month-to-month leases, or some of them will do 3-month leases or 6-month leases. Now, we do want to caution you guys against getting cornered into doing a 3-month or a 6-month lease. If you don't have to, try not to, because even if you sign a contract for 13 weeks or 26 weeks, there's always a chance you could get canceled.
Yeah, month to month is always, well, so either month to month, or if you do sign a 3 or 6 month contract, see what the cancellation clause is like. How much money you're going to lose if you have to cancel early, because you never know when your contract's going to get canceled. Ideally, that doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. In our 4.5 years of traveling, it's happened one time that we've had a contract ended early. So it's not common, but if that happens and you're locked into a 3-month lease, and say you've only been there a week, worst case scenario, and you have a 2 weeks notice, then you're 3 weeks in, and you're already locked into 3 months. So if you don't find something else in that area, you're pretty much stuck either staying in that area for 3 months without a job, trying to find PRN work, or you're stuck paying for that lease when you move out. So you really don't want that situation.
We've heard this happen to some people before. We were working with some coworkers that were travel therapists that got their contract canceled, and they still had like 2 months or something left on their lease. I think it was like $1,500 a month. It was rough. And they just got locked into that. They had to pay it. So
new travelers, that happens a lot because you don't realize how, what would happen if your contract's ended early. And like I said, that's not common, but it does happen.
Yeah. So try to avoid that if possible, but if it's a last resort, it's a last resort. So we have some questions coming in. We'll answer some questions here at the end. So a couple other options: you can call apartment complexes, you can call realtors, you can look at extended stay motels, and sometimes those offer obviously weekly rates or monthly rates, which is nice. Still can be more on the expensive side, but if it's a last resort, you might have to. You can also ask around. Someone had mentioned the Facebook groups. So there's a few Facebook groups. There's There's
probably
nurse,
more than we know about, but I know at least a few.
It's like nurse, gypsy housing, travel therapist, gypsy housing, furnished finder.
If you just search in like either Google or Facebook, like travel nurse housing, there are tons, and you can join those groups. And basically what you do is you go in there and either you search for the city that you're going to be in, and you can see other people have either asked questions about that or listed housing for that area. If you don't see anything, then just type in there like, does anyone know, or I need housing for Goldsboro, North Carolina for 3 months starting this date, and just see what's available.
Yeah, and I searched Facebook groups and I saw a couple things, but they would say like they were old or they weren't current. And some of them on the Furnished Finder Facebook group are the same ones that you're going to see on the Furnished Finder website, but it's still somewhere to look. I would also encourage you guys to use your Facebook community, use your own group. Just post it on your own Facebook. You never know of those 1,000 Facebook friends you have if you're going to have a friend or a friend of a friend or a family member that might have something. We met this girl at NSC who's a student who's going to be doing a clinical in some other state, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. We never did clinicals as students out of state, and she was like, I'm staying with my grandpa's aunts, no, probably not his grandpa's aunts, my aunts, neighbors, doctors, friends, somebody. And I'm like, how did that happen? She was like, I don't know, just connections. It's all about who you know.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. It happens sometimes. So ask around. Now, somebody mentioned, have you ever heard of calling local churches to see if they can help finding housing? That's a great idea. I've even heard of calling the local Chamber of Commerce might have somebody, a connection, calling the HR department especially if you're working at like a big hospital system. Maybe they've had travel nurses or travel therapists come through there before, and maybe they know about housing that's not listed. Sometimes
on your interview, if the interview sounds good and it sounds like you're probably, you're connecting well with the manager, you can always ask them. We've done that in the past. Like, do you know of any housing options nearby? Especially like what he said, if they've had travelers in the past, they might know where prior travelers stayed, and that'll at least give you some kind of lead. And you never know the situation. It could be that they have a room, or they know someone that has a room, or there's a lot of options there.
Seriously, and a lot of people don't list things necessarily, but they might be open to it. And a lot of people don't necessarily want people there short term, so maybe it says on the Craigslist ad or on the ad wherever, for a 12-month lease. But maybe if you call them and have a conversation with them and say, I'm a healthcare provider, I'm here, serving your community, I'm here as a travel therapist, have you heard of that before? It's like a travel nurse, because people a lot of times don't even know what that is, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what a travel nurse is. My aunt's neighbor's daughter was a travel nurse. Yeah. Maybe they might be more willing to work with you. So it doesn't hurt to ask. even if it doesn't say they do month to month,
Yeah.
just ask.
People are a lot more willing to bend the rules for things like travel therapists, because they know at least the majority of travel therapists, after going through much school, are going to be pretty professional people. And we found that with not only housing, but also like gyms and things. They might only have year memberships, but you say, okay, well, I'm a PT, I'll be in the area for a few months. Is there any way you can do month to month? They might be, oh yeah, we can do that. So, just mentioning why you're in the area so that they know that you're not just, a transient person that they might not want living there can make a big
Or
difference.
that might not pay your bills, or might not take care of the place, that sort of thing. Let's see, Lisa says, some hospitals have rooms or apartments that they let travelers stay in. Check what the HR asked during the interview. That's a good point. I mean, some places have nursing programs like on site. Like I've heard of LPN and BSN programs that go through the hospital, so they might even have dorms or anything like that on site. Or there was that place in Yuma, Arizona that had a specific extended stay for employees of the hospital. So good point. Now, as you're searching and you're looking for all these different places for housing, the next thing to think about is you're going to ask them if it's furnished or unfurnished and if the utilities are included in the price or not. Ideally, you're going to find a place that has furnished already. If you don't, there's a lot of different options. Some people get furniture when they get there just by piecing it together, asking around. Maybe somebody has a bed they're not using, or a table they're not using, or maybe you go to the Goodwill, or maybe you go somewhere like Aaron's to rent furniture. Court Furniture is another one that rents. Some people have a little trailer and they bring stuff with them, or they bring like a blow-up air mattress or that sort of thing. So there's ways to quickly and easily furnish places if you can't find a furnished place.
Yeah, it really depends on your comfort level, because we've known people in the past, like Whitney said, a blow-up mattress, and then for tables, they'll use like the tubs that they take their stuff in. So you just put the empty tub down and put plates
a lamp
in.
on top. And,
so some people, we probably wouldn't do that, but it definitely depends on what kind of person you are. Like, if you're used to doing a lot of camping, that might sound luxurious to you. You don't.
I mean, I've seen people use just those fold up, like, those circle chairs that I feel like all of us girls have when we were like 14 years old, like the circle chair you put in your room. That just folds up really easy. Put in your car. That could be your recliner in your living room. And you could put the tub down as a coffee table or a side table and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of options. We travelers try to travel light if possible, because you got to pack everything in your little car or a little trailer with you, or the car top thing. So try to keep it light and get things when you get there.
Yeah, we've mentioned this probably a video we did, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago at our last assignment. But every assignment we go to, we pack less, and that was still the case this time. I packed the least I've ever packed, and I probably still have too much stuff. So every single contract, I've taken less stuff.
Yeah.
And I think most travelers are that way.
Yeah, I think it teaches you to be more
minimalist.
So we're getting close to wrapping up. If you guys have questions, I know a couple of you have already asked questions, and I have a question from Heather from earlier I want to address. But if y'all have questions, please leave them in the comments section, and we'll answer them live if you're on right now. If you're watching this later on the replay and you'd like to leave questions, feel free to comment and we'll go back and look at them later.
Yep.
So earlier, our friend Heather had asked us a question. She wanted to know about if anybody negotiates with Airbnb off the website, meaning, do they ever contact an Airbnb host and say, would you be willing to negotiate a different price or do something not through the website?
People do this all the time. Like we said, Airbnb, the prices can be pretty high compared to some other like short-term rentals, as in month to month or 3 months or whatever. So a lot of times the people that are renting these places, they would like to have a professional there for 3 months instead of having to turn over the apartment much more often. So they're a lot of times willing to take a lower margin if they know the person is going to be they're making plenty of money, they're probably not going to have any trouble paying, and they don't have to go and clean it so much. So if you are able, so a lot of times what people will do is they'll probably take like the first month through Airbnb, and then once they get there, or once they confirm the listing, they might contact the host and say, hey, is there any way that we could set up a lower price off-site, because I know that Airbnb takes a portion of how much you make. Obviously this is something that Airbnb frowns upon, but people definitely do it, and you can get a lower price that way. And the only downside I would say is that there's less protections for you as a renter, because if something goes wrong and you're going through Airbnb's platform, they might be able to help you out, refund you, something like that. If you're going directly through the landlord and something goes wrong, I mean, you might have to take them to court directly, which is, that would be a huge
But at
hassle.
the same time, it's kind of the same as when we've rented off Craigslist.
Yeah.
Craigslist is usually just an agreement between you guys. Usually
It's exactly the same as
we
Craigslist.
try to have some type of lease written up, but it's usually just formalities. It's it's for our tax time purposes. It's just something basic that says, yes, we're paying you money to stay here. These are the dates we're going to stay here. It's usually nothing too fancy, but it's just kind of the same as if you were to do that at that point. Because who knows, maybe that person advertises it on Airbnb and Craigslist. It's just the same. It's just that Airbnb has this platform with this whole legal thing through it. So it depends on your comfort level with that. But yes, Heather, to answer your question, people do that all the time. They might just contact somebody through there without even booking, or they might book it for a couple nights or a month and then negotiate thereafter. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, for sure. So if you guys got value from this video, please like it, give us a thumbs up, hearts, tag a friend that might be interested in travel. The thing about travel housing is it is kind of scary. In our presentation at NSC, I talked about how there's some things about travel that are the big cons. One of them is licensing, one of them is housing for sure. And it's the things that keep people from pursuing travel therapy or being really nervous about pursuing travel therapy. And yeah, it can be kind of scary, but it's not that difficult. It almost always works out well. We've had a couple situations that were not perfect, but no bad situations, I would say. Situations that we weren't sad to leave, but we weren't like begging to leave either. You know what I mean? So 4.5 years, most of our situations have been pretty good in terms of housing. So it's not something you should be really worried about. It's definitely not something that would deter us from traveling, but in the beginning we were nervous about it as well.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. It's a con, but it's not big enough con to outweigh all the pros that come along with travel therapy.
I think it's definitely a hassle to worry about getting it set up, and there's a lot of this back and forth and uncertainty. I think honestly though, looking back at a lot of our situations, I think for us, the worst case scenario would have always been having to pay more money. Like if we hadn't gotten our first choice of where we'd stay for housing, we would have had to go with some kind of extended stay or furnished rental that was going to be a lot more expensive, and we wouldn't have wanted to do that, but it wouldn't have been the end of the world. We would have just not come out as far ahead financially, but we still would have found something.
Yeah, one other thing I do want to mention is if I was a single traveler, and I would say probably for Whitney, definitely if she was a single traveler, we would not do this sight unseen thing that some travelers do. We would probably go to the new area and stay in a hotel for maybe a week. It's more expensive that way, and it's more of a hassle, but then you can at least check out the area and see what the options actually look like, because something might look a lot different online than it does in person.
Yes.
So that's kind of the, if you're really nervous about it and you're not overly concerned with the price, because, it's going to be a little more expensive, but not huge. Go there for a week, stay in a hotel, and scout out the housing options. Either, if you can go early or you can go the weekend before, go look at some places and then move into a place so that it's not so, so risky. You don't know what it's going to be like when you get there. So that's probably a happy medium for a lot of people. Go scout out the area and then choose somewhere to live.
Yeah. And the other thing I don't think we mentioned is if you are a solo traveler, a lot of solo travelers rent rooms in places. So we were sort of talking about renting like a whole furnished apartment or that sort of thing. If I was a solo traveler, I would rent rooms in people's houses through Airbnb or through Craigslist or a friend of a friend, because it's a lot easier. It's just like having a roommate if you're okay with that. If you're a solo person, you don't have pets, you don't have a spouse or anything like that. Hi Bethany, thanks for joining in. Bethany is actually a solo traveler, so Bethany, you might be able to chime in on what we were talking about here. We were saying as a couple, we always try to find a furnished place that's by ourselves.
Yeah, one, we don't want to rent a room, and two, most people don't want a couple in a rented room in their house.
That's a lot. But if you're a solo traveler, Bethany, have you ever just rented a room in a house? Bethany says she always asks her director, like during the interview, do you usually rent a whole place, like a whole unit to yourself, private, or do you do a room in a house? Because I think really if I was a solo traveler, I would way more often do rooms in a house. Then you'd know somebody in the area. You'd feel
really
safer.
keep costs down that way.
Keep costs lower.
Sometimes you can rent a room for say $400 a month, whereas a whole apartment might be $1,200 a month. It can be a huge difference. The only downside, obviously, is that you don't know what kind of person it might be until you get there. But
roommate issues could
Yeah.
always be a problem, but
Yeah.
definitely an option, definitely something I would pursue if you guys are going to be solo travelers out there, because we get that a lot. People are always like, well, you guys make this sound so great, but you travel as a couple. It must be so much easier traveling as a couple. And we always say there's pros and cons with everything.
For sure.
There would be a lot more flexibility if you were a solo traveler.
And people also talk about how it's easier to save money as a couple, but that's not always the case, because a room might be a lot less expensive than a one bedroom. So
Yeah.
you do save on some areas and some areas you don't. So
Yeah. Hey, Kim. I know Kim can relate. I know she travels with her husband, Aaron, and they probably always get furnished places to themselves. That's what we try to do as a couple. But
yeah.
definitely pros and cons out there, and we just want to let you guys know it's not always the most fun thing finding housing, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, look at it as an adventure, just like all of travel. The road trips, the moving, the job interviews, all that stuff. It's just it's an adventure, and you get to reap the rewards once you get there and get everything settled. Because the moving, no matter what, is always going to be a hassle. But once you get there, then you get to explore the area, and that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, Kim. Thanks for watching. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for tonight. Again, if y'all have more questions about housing, feel free to leave a comment below and we'll check it later, or you can feel free to send us a personal message and we'd be happy to help you guys out. Oh, Bethany is back with an answer for us. Okay, Bethany says, so I've rented a room as temporary while she was trying to find a place. She's also looked for private typically, but she's actually currently renting a room at her current placement. It saves a buck and I'm enjoying the company after being solo for a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I mean, there's kind of some pros and cons to being on your own versus being with somebody else. Renting from a coworker. Oh, how is that, renting from a coworker? Because you probably work with them every day.
That could be good, or it could be really bad.
Yeah. So thank you guys again so much for joining in. We appreciate it. Again, if y'all got any value or learned anything tonight, we would love if you would just give us a thumbs up and show us some love.
Yep.
And if you guys have any questions about housing or anything else about getting started with travel therapy, please feel free to send us a message on our Facebook, or you can visit us at our website, traveltherapymentor.com.
Yep, we're planning on another video next Sunday,
Yeah.
probably 9 o'clock as well, but we will see. We might be in the car again, we might not be, we don't know yet. But if you guys have any ideas for topics or anything you want to hear about, let us know.
Awesome. Hopefully next week we'll come at you from our house if we have internet
Yep.
set up.
All right, see you guys.
Good night. Bye.